Thank you, Professor Panda. Namaskar, Jai Jagannath. My revered panel members on the dais, my teachers, mentors of the dais, my faculty friends, and dear students. It's indeed a great pleasure being a part of this conference, Conclave, Professor Panda Padhy, Professor Upendra Padhy, and at the same time, I congratulate Professor Panda for pointing out a very serious, that a very pertinent question. But before to that, I must beg apology, Professor Panda. Allow me a little space of just passing your question, and I'll come up to that point again. So, in my presentation, in my speech, in my deliberation, first I would like to focus on information credibility, communication credibility, societal change, deepfake, a byproduct of artificial intelligence, and development sustainability. I just want to correlate these three things. Friends, ever since the end of the Second World War, there was a commonly shared concern among the development theorists, the policymakers across the globe, to address the problems of unemployment and other related social and economic issues at an immediate, and to conclude the reason and amiable solution and a panacea in the form of that came up in the shape of industrial revolution, in its modern shape. When industrial revolution was there, development was there, but was pinpointed and was confined to the Western reach, negating the very interests of the underdeveloped and developing countries, creating a development divide, a bridge between the haves and have-nots, the so-called third world countries and the rich nations, in the form of information gap, knowledge gap, socio-economic benefits gap, and also, and from that, a concept of imperialism in the form of knowledge transfer, technology transfer, and information transfer crop up. Now, when the development was focused on the basis of industrial revolution, development was there, but somehow the direction was it was lopsided due to some specific reasons, as a result of which the direction was, direction was lopsided. To rectify, again, in 1970s, a very important, that very crucial international developmental dialogue meet in the name of Club of Summit, Rome Club of Summit, from out of which a new knowledge came into the forum in the form of limits to growth theory by Professor Meadows. In that particular theory, they found out that there was a missing link in the development chain, because of which the developmental fruits were confined to few hands, negating the very interest of the downtrodden or the so-called third world countries. And that missing link was very effectively coined in the form of communication for development. So credit goes to Quibble and Professor Charles Perrings, who contributed a lot, giving it a specific discipline, and status. Now, in the theory of limits to growth, what they wanted to say, yes, development should be with the use of, in this modern industrial revolution, using both capital-intensive and labor-intensive technological know-how, but should not be at the cost of environmental depletion, biodiversity degradation, and ecological harms. So, again, a new concept that was coined in that forum in the form of communication for sustainable development. Now, when sustainable development come up, the concept was coined. In that particular concept, there was a thin demarcation, there was a clear-cut, distinguishable demarcation between the existing generation and the future generation, so far as the resource utilization and equitability of the scarce resources is concerned. Because there was a disparity because there was a scarcity, because there was a mismatch between the demands and the supply of resources. The demand was ending and the supply was scanty, creating a situation of scarcity. That scarcity demanded whatever resources we have at our disposal needs to be efficiently utilized so that can fulfill the need and requirement and whims and fancies of the common masses. Here, for the first time, communication was used as a facilitator to address the problems using the persuasive skill and the motivational content. But friends, communication using persuasive skill and motivational content demands that while designing the content, it needs to cater trustworthiness, relevance, accuracy, and tone of the message. Tone of the message is very important to maintain credibility of communication or information. And today, we almost passed the saga of when we used to say in our traditional journalism, seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. That was a phenomenon in the traditional journalism. Today we are witnessing seeing no longer is a believing phenomenon. Whatever we see, hardly to be believed. It is because of the emergence of artificial intelligence. Friends, when we are talking about, I'm not a technical person, I will focus on from the viewpoint of communication. Since we are using artificial intelligence, being a communicator, using the content, designing the content, using artificial intelligence for the target audience, those who are not information sufficient, there are gaps, there are information gaps, there are knowledge gaps and benefits gaps. So here, while designing the content of communication here, one must keep in mind designing the tone of the message. If I'll be allowed, I must say how the tone of the message successfully can create a social change so far as development is concerned. Friends, this is a case study emerged from my daily research work. So I just want to put, because it sounds a little bit penetrating. Friend, it is a case study from Uttar Pradesh, where in a certain district of Uttar Pradesh, there was a small village. The village was completely cut off from the developmental mainstream. The society, the village, which was located in that particular region, district, was completely cut off from the developmental mainstream. The village, from social, from economic viewpoint, as I said, was completely cut off. And in that particular village, there was a small health clinic and was assigned a MBBS trained doctor of the Uttar Pradesh government was assigned the task of being the caretaker of that health clinic. One day what happened, a lady from a very humble background who hailed from that particular village, been to the clinic for some medical prescription for her ailing baby. The doctor, after a thorough diagnosis, has prescribed some medicine, advising to administer. Look, you have to administer, the doctor is saying, look, this is what is the tone of the message, which is very critical, which is very important and crucial for maintaining the credibility of communication. Look, you have to administer half a teaspoonful of medicine in every 6 hours of duration. The doctor of that clinic is addressing to the lady who hailed from the humble background, asking with a tone of message, you have to administer half a teaspoonful of medicine in every 6 hours of duration. This was the prescription given to the lady. The lady shook her head, returned back to her residence, applied the medicine to the ailing baby, but unfortunately what happened, the very next day, the ailing baby was brought to the clinic very immediately, and the situation almost collapsed. Somehow, the doctor, after seeing after again a detailed diagnosis, was given high dose of medicine and the situation was controlled. Now the question is, from a communication viewpoint, Despite the best intention of the doctor, it's not that the doctor was a Jhola Chhap doctor, the doctor was a trained MBBS doctor. Whatever medicine was prescribed was perfect. These are the assumptions we can make. And the medicine, since the diagnosis was good, the medicine and the dose was even perfect. But the reason was, while setting the tone and designing the content of communication message, the doctor failed in communicating, being a communicator. When he said, you have to administer half a teaspoonful of medicine, full of medicine, the concept of teaspoon that sounded to the lady quite foreign. Even till date, I do not have a concept what exactly should be the size of a teaspoon. It varies from person to person, the size varies from person to person, depending upon his taste or her taste. So here, when she was prescribed, you have to administer half a teaspoon full of medicine, the lady, she administered according to her own state of understanding, and possibly it could be कि the size ज़्यादा हो गया हो या छोटा हो गया हो. As a result of which what happened, no, the situation was beyond control. The second was, when she was said, you have to administer in every 6 hours of duration, 6 hours of duration. The content of communication, while designing, was negated the socio-economic background of the target audience. Because first I said, with an assumption, the village was completely cut off from the developmental mainstream. The lady hailed from a humble background. She was deprived because the village in which majority of the population they are living below poverty line. The basic calorie intake was at a very dismal state. They are deprived of getting square meal a day. The literacy level was very dismal. As a result of which, the lady failed to understand and failed to demarcate from 1 6 hours of duration to the second 6 hours of duration. Because they were so poor that she didn't have a watch at her disposal. And this was not within the concept of the communicator. So, what I wanted to say, when tone of the message, relevance, and trust, these are the salient features of maintaining credibility. Now, I will take half a minute. Since why this concept, what are the causes of credibility crisis in India? What are the causes? That needs to be checked in order to maintain it, in order to address the problems, or in order to rectify a social change for the sake of attaining the goals of development. As I said, the people, they are overloaded with misinformation. Information and misinformation. They are overloaded. Secondly, there is a very, very serious problem of low digital literacy. There are many causes. Because of the paucity of time, I just don't nail it down. But for India, so far as the credibility crisis and the deepfake crisis are concerned, I just want to say that deepfake emerged from artificial intelligence is again a coin having two sides with two outcomes. In one side, it is a risk and uncertainties. At the same time, the other side, there are some potential benefits. So, I think my time is over. I surpassed my time. Sorry, I failed.